Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Brian. Hope you're doing well today. It is Wednesday, the 28th of October, and just going to run through a really quick Forex update for you. Look for some U.S. session breakouts. So let's go ahead and get started with it. I'm going to start over here with the news. We do have some news coming up on the CAD at 9 a.m. Central, 10 Eastern. We've got some bank statement and monetary policy reports, followed by Bank of Canada press conference down here. So there's going to be a potential volatility on the CAD coming up here shortly, which will play into what we're going to talk about today as we go over here and have a look at what's actually happening in the market leading up to the new session beginning. So the U.S., the Canadian foreign exchange sessions begin at 8 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time, which is here in about 7 minutes. It's 7 a.m. my time right now. What we're looking at coming into the market, we've had a strong dollar over the evening trading, London session, Tokyo session. Dollar's been pushing stronger. So money flowing out of your various indexes, stock market, so on, going into the dollar. People are going flat, and that's kind of expected leading up to the election. But the big takeaway from this is if we go over here and have a look at what our currencies have been moving for the day, we're seeing that many or most of our typically volatile currencies have been have already ranged out. So if we look at, like, let's say over here we've got the dollar moving to strength and the pound is a weaker currency, so we're seeing nice divergence here, which has been great over the course of the trading day leading up to now. But coming into the U.S. session, we're kind of at the end of this. So we come into the U.S. session, we have a look at what's happening with the pound versus the USD, which is a really nice pattern when we look at the currency strength index, right? But it's moved 112 pips for the day. Its average is about anywhere from 118 to 120. So if we're looking to get a breakout and then get a quick push into the 20 pips of profit, what's the likelihood of that continuing on? Very well could continue, because we may see other markets just continue to sell off today and see that dollar continuing to strengthen. And as long as we see some selling in the pound, that could certainly continue on. The only ones that we really have some opportunity on, though, is the CAD pair, which we just talked about the fact that the Canadian dollar has news coming up at 9 a.m. Eastern, or 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern, on rate statements, monetary policy, and then a press conference. So the CAD's pretty flat, which probably plays into the point that if we look over here at the Euro CAD or the Pound CAD, it really hasn't moved very much against its typical range. So what can we do with that? Well, I guess we've got a couple of options here. One, we could see if we get a little bit of a pullback on, let's say the pound versus the USD. So if we get a pullback here, and then we see, so maybe as the morning session begins, if we see, some buying on the pound, some selling on the USD, they approach the midpoint and then diverge from there. That would give us an opportunity to trade later in the day. But from a breakout perspective, I don't really see myself taking a pound USD breakout. The pound CAD would be a great breakout pair, especially if we get a burst of divergence as we get to the start of the new session. But with news coming up shortly after, it gives us a very limited amount of time for that to move for us. So that one really depends on your level of risk tolerance, right? You've got one of two scenarios. We either see the CAD strengthen against the pound. So if we see the CAD burst above the midpoint here, then we could play, a short on the pound versus the CAD. Or the flip side of that would be the CAD begins to weaken at the start of the new session, and we could play a breakout long with the Euro against the CAD. So we've got two different directions that we could go: long on the Euro CAD, short on the pound CAD. But just remembering, the CAD may not go anywhere. It could just be flat for the day leading up. Well, I say the day leading up. It could be flat leading up to that new the news announcements that are coming out here in just a bit. So, you know, I think there's some opportunity there. It just depends on what your risk tolerance is. For me, I would prefer just to say, hey, today we've got news coming up on the CAD. I'm not willing to take a trade in advance of that news, so I'm just going to be flat. But for those that want to look at something and maybe want a little bit of action, you know, look at breakouts, either long EuroCAD or short CAD, pound CAD, as that new session begins. And you've got, you know, two different ways it could go. You know, you might play one long, one short, see which one fills, and then obviously trail your stop pretty closely to see if you can't get a little bit of profit leading up to that news event. But for me, I'm going to stay on the sidelines here and let the news happen, and then see what the market's doing post news. All right, so that's it. So some breakout ideas there. EuroCAD potentially long, pound CAD potentially short. Great ways to play both directions on that CAD leading up to its news. But again, just want to reiterate, I think the safer option is just to wait for the news to do its thing and come back and look for trading another day. All right, so that's it for me. I'm going to wrap it up here. You guys all have a great day, and we'll talk to you in a bit.